August 19th, 1987. A lone gunman, Michael Ryan, took to the streets of Hungerford in Berkshire with an armoury of weapons. In the space of 1 hour, he fired over 119 shots, killing 16 people and injuring a further 15. That one man's actions changed the lives of the people at the centre of the killing spree. His devastation to their lives took less than an hour and stayed with them for a lifetime. It was a crime that changed Britain.
I could hear gunfire, and that's not, you know, that's quite usual around here, but I knew it was the wrong type of gunfire. I knew something was wrong.
Among those killed were passers-by and a policeman who tried to reason with him.
Just said to Mum, "Oh my God, I've been shot," to which her response was, "Don't be stupid." And with that, he just opened fire on Mum's side of the car.
Many people knew the gunman, a local man in his mid-20s who collected weapons.
It's somebody that's been living within the community and somebody that would certainly have known quite a lot of his victims by sight, if not by name.
Ambulance crews had come under fire as they attempted to tend for the wounded.
You had people saying, my daughter or my son's up there and why aren't you doing anything? And people were shouting at you, but you couldn't actually put the crews at risk.
A heavily armed man walking through this quiet country town, shooting people apparently at random.
It's just going to alter everybody's perspective of life, full stop.
Michael Ryan was a 27-year-old who lived with his mum in Hungerford. His father had passed away 2 years previously. Ryan was a quiet man who kept himself to himself. He shunned socializing, instead dedicating time to his one passion, guns, spending hours down at the shooting range.
He'd never come to police notice, he wasn't known to us, and he wasn't known, in all fairness, to many people in Hungerford.
I know he had lots of different jobs and things, because my grandmother, who lived in the same road, used to gossip about everybody that lived in the street, and that was sort of coming across in conversation, you know, that things that his mother had said about him, but nothing at all to indicate anything sort of sinister really was going on.
And I don't think anybody could sort of quite believe that it was Michael Ryan, because a lot of the other people who were injured did come from Southview and they were his neighbours.
In the ambulance service, we took his father to the day centre on a regular basis. And the only time that I actually came across Michael Ryan was when we used to take him home. And sometimes he used to be sort of standing in the doorway.
You'd only see him if he was walking his dog or he was doing something for his mum's car, and that was it. Never see him any other time.
This film will tell the story of the Hungerford massacre through the eyewitness accounts of 4 people at the centre of the tragedy. Alison Chapman was a 16-year-old living in the next road up from Michael Ryan. A resident in Hungerford all her life, she knew the area well. Alison was getting ready to return to work after having lunch at home with her mum.
Yeah, well, it was a sunny day in August, school holidays. I just finished school because I was 16 at the time. I'd come back from work in the morning and I was just at home with Mum. We were having lunch.
What time do you finish today?
Not late, I hope.
Carl Harris was a 21-year-old soldier on leave from the army at his parents' house across town. His family moved to Hungerford just 5 years previously.
The day started when I was out with my little brother fixing my car. I was due to go back to the army in the next couple of days and I had to do some repairs on it.
Sylvia Pascoe lived a few doors up from Michael Ryan in Southview with her husband and 2 children. She had been his neighbour for 10 years. That day, she'd risen early to do the housework before going to meet her sister.
The 19th of August was a nice sunny day, and getting up, doing my job, so I'd organised to go and meet my sister, so needed to get the house spick and span, and I was in my night dress and dressing gown. My children were outside playing with the next door neighbours' kids, and it was just an everyday event really.
Sarah Britton had been a nurse for 12 years. Just 3 days before, she had swapped her nursing duties for a managerial role and was still finding her feet at a new hospital, the Princess Margaret, 47 miles away in Windsor.
I'd been employed as a service manager for the medical wards, and on getting up, I put on an outfit because I was still obviously out trying to impress, and I had a really busy day. The programme was sort of preset for me, and I remember, I think, just grabbing a sandwich for lunch.
As the residents of Hungerford settle into their daily business, police in the adjoining town of Newbury are getting confused reports of an attempted armed robbery at a petrol station down the road. These calls to the police are the first indications of a gunman on the loose. In Savernake Forest, 10 miles from Hungerford, Michael Ryan marches Sue Godfrey away from her small children and shoots her 13 times. He has just claimed his first victim. He then drives to the petrol station en route to Hungerford, firing at an attendant. And now he's heading straight towards Alison Chapman and her mum. Michael Ryan has returned to Southview and set the family home on fire with the petrol he has just bought. When he returns to his car and it fails to start, he reaches breaking point. He shoots his dog. Then turns the gun on his neighbours, killing Roland and Sheila Mason and injuring Marjorie Jackson and Lisa Mildenhall.
Our house backed onto what is the primary school in Hungerford, and they were doing maintenance work, so there were scaffolders and builders, and we just heard what was like scaffolding poles being dropped.
Did you hear that noise?
Probably kids playing, don't worry.
They'll make the horses skittish. Can we go check on them?
They'll be fine. Come on, let's get you to work.
See, they're really loud. I'm sure they're coming from near Southview.
So we thought, oh, Mum dropped me off at work, but we'll go via that way just to check that she's all right, not running around the field and hurting herself. We turned down the bottom of Clark's Gardens, which is where we lived. It's a short drive, probably about 30 seconds, not very far at all.
As Alison and her mum head towards Southview, over at the hospital, Sarah Britton is receiving sketchy reports of a serious incident unfolding in Hungerford.
The gentleman that came in was the Deputy Unit General Manager. He stood in the doorway. He certainly had an air about him, sort of, that he needed my attention fairly quickly, and that he just generally stated that we were going together around to the A&E department, and he was out of the door virtually as he sort of finished that sentence. The major incident plan had been activated.
Doctors, nurses, could I have your attention, please?
It wasn't until we were actually in the department that he briefed all the staff to say that there had been an incident at Hungerford.
Meanwhile, a concerned Alison and her mum are almost at Southview.
Because I was working in a sandwich packing company, a summer holiday job, I'd learnt to pack tuna and onion sandwiches, and we'd had them for lunch, and we were talking about that. In front of us was a police car which was parked on the right-hand side. It was parked half up the bank, so it just looked like it had parked there out the way for passing traffic. In front of the car, our car, Michael Ryan was stood with the gun across his chest. He was in camouflage from head to toe. He just glanced towards the car, and then before me and Mum could really say an awful lot to each other, he just opened fire on the car.
Michael Ryan is at Southview, Hungerford. He has sparked a police emergency after shooting dead a woman in Savernake Forest and attempting to murder a cashier at a petrol station. 2 neighbours have now also been shot dead as he walks up the street and fires at Ken Clements, walking his dog near the common, and PC Roger Brereton, the first police officer to attend the scene. He has now killed 5 people and injured 2 more. Alison Chapman and her mum have come to investigate the noises, mistaking the gunshots for scaffolding poles being dropped.
What's the police car doing there? What's going on? He's gonna shoot us!
He was holding a gun across his chest. He was very stubbly, sort of unshaven, and he just looked really like, I don't know what the word is, not sort of brain dead, that's a bit exaggeration, but just really not quite there. He opened fire my side first. I remember putting my leg down and pulling it up and just said to Mum, "Oh my God, I've been shot," to which her response was, "Don't be stupid." And with that, he just opened fire on Mum's side of the car. When I glanced to her, and she's quite small, and her head was like twice the size of its normal size. She looked like she'd been pepper sprayed with blood. She had a cut to her neck and a cut right over her shoulder and was just pouring with blood. Then it went quiet. He'd obviously run out of bullets. And Mum just sort of put the car in reverse. Don't know how she managed to, and she just reversed back down Southview.
Across town, 21-year-old soldier Carl Harris has immediately been alerted by the noise. As a lance corporal in the army, he is all too aware of the distinct sound of firearms.
What was that? Sounded like gunshots, and proper gunshots. I'm gonna go and take a look.
I had to go and get a part from a shop down in town. Just before I left, I could hear gunfire, and that's not, that's quite usual around here. But I knew it was the wrong type of gunfire. I knew something was wrong, and I headed off down into the high street to basically see what was going on. And as I walked down the hill into the high street, somebody said that there was somebody out and they were shooting people.
It's now 1:20 p.m. and Carl, concerned that the gunshots are something sinister, hurries towards the high street to investigate. Remarkably, after both being shot by Michael Ryan, Alison Chapman and her mum are managing to drive to the doctor's clinic, almost a mile away.
I had wellies on because we were going up the field, and I could feel the blood running down my leg, and it was all going through my toes and all squelchy. And I didn't really know what to do with this piece of flesh on my hand, so I just sat there with it on my hand, and as if to say, well, what do I do with it? I didn't really think about myself at all, I don't think, at that time. I was only 16, it was all a bit surreal. I was much more concerned about my mum and if she was okay. I mean, I'd looked at her and just, I think that was one of the most awful things I ever saw as a 16-year-old child, to see your mum in that state. It just got me, and it's really emotional for me now. I don't think anybody really any further was aware what was going on because we drove right across the high street.
In fact, a lot of people in town that day were completely unaware Michael Ryan was roaming the streets with his guns.
There were roadblocks on, and quite clearly every effort was being made to keep the general public away from where the scene. It transpired this gunman was on the loose.
It was amazing, really, because I was running down the street and people were just going about their daily business.
Even at the time, there was one of my friends was walking back to work, and I was like, well, what are you doing, Is there a gunman around? They didn't even know. They didn't have a clue what was going on. They said, oh, I only walked over, thought it was a traffic accident.
People were still about, but they were being cleared out, so there was been a sterile area made around the town centre. But there were still some people about.
Michael Ryan continues to roam the quiet streets as shoppers in the high street less than 900 yards away are oblivious to his actions. Walking down the road, he kills another neighbour, Abdur Khan. Ryan's mother, Dorothy, just returning home, tries to reason with him in the chaos. He kills her. He is now heading to the Memorial Gardens. 8 people are lying dead, with 8 more seriously wounded.
As we turned down into the croft, Mum said, where shall I park the car? When I was 16 at the time, and I don't swear very often, and I certainly didn't back then, but my response was something like, just bloody stop the car. With that, we then crashed into the verge outside the doctor's surgery, which is there's a big tree. The brakes had gone on the car, so we just sort of came into land. One of the nurses then came out with the doctor, and that she helped me into the surgery with sort of, I had my arm around her and we sort of limped in. But so I was taken into a different room then and just kept with the nurse, she was rubbing my leg constantly, obviously trying to keep the circulation going, and I was asking her questions like, how big's the hole? Because obviously it's in the bottom of my thigh and I couldn't see it, and she was sort of saying, well, that's sort of like saucer size, you know, and you know, not to worry, we'll get you sorted out.
Okay.
As word gradually spreads of the danger in Hungerford, over at the hospital in Windsor, Sarah Britton and her colleagues are starting to receive the first casualties.
I very quickly gave a brief summary of my sort of immediate sort of past experience so that my colleagues had some idea of what my level of professional sort of capability and skills were at that time.
The exit wound is always much larger than the entry wound, so when you're assessing your patients you need to look for a large exit wound. If there's anything
By then, the first ambulance, you could hear the ambulance actually approaching the hospital. Doors were opening, more people were coming into the department, remembering that we were having to get patients who were already in the department out and clearing cubicles, etc. There wasn't time to think, it was just automatic mode and get on with the job. All we knew that there was an incident in Hungerford, and then somebody, I think, actually said there had been a shooting. But I think we probably all thought at that stage that it was just one or two. Nobody had any understanding of the number of casualties that were about to come through the door.
As Sarah is tending to the patients, Alison and her mum are rushed to the Princess Margaret Hospital. Her mum has lost a lot of blood, and doctors are about to discover the severity of Alison's injuries.
I was taken out on a stretcher, and I was taken actually and just examined and had some x-rays. They just had a quick look and they actually stitched me up, put me in a side room and said that I could go home.
As Alison tries to cope with her injuries, her family are desperately trying to find out what has happened.
First I knew was my dad called, and he was terribly upset, and never really heard my dad upset particularly, and said that my sister and mum had been in a car accident. And I sort of realised straight away that he wasn't sort of coming forward with what was necessarily the whole story. I remember it being chaotic when we got down there. I remember being dropped off at the front of the hospital and trying to go into reception and find out what was happening.
Don't worry.
I think the first person that came in and told me anything was Dad, before any of the doctors turned up, and I just remember him breaking down and being really, really absolutely floored, and never seeing him like that, and then realising that it was a lot worse than I'd imagined, really.
Meanwhile, back in Hungerford, Ryan remains unchallenged as the police hunt continues. He's now moved on to kill Francis Butler in the Memorial Gardens, then calmly walked the streets, killing Marcus Barnard, Douglas Wainwright and Eric Vardy, and injuring a further 4. The death toll is now 12, with 12 severely injured. Carl Harris, oblivious to all of this, is about to discover the enormity of what is unfolding.
So I just wandered up there, just see what was going on. And it wasn't until I actually, I can't remember the name of the road, went up the little cut and walked round to the top that I actually saw him stood there, that I realised something was wrong. It wasn't until he actually started opening fire that I thought, basically thought, well, this is not good.
In the last 45 minutes, 12 people have been shot dead and 12 injured as Michael Ryan roams the streets of Hungerford. As police hurry to stop any further bloodshed, Carl Harris has just caught Ryan's attention on the corner of Priory Road. They now stand face to face.
I don't think he saw me first of all, and I carried on up. He then just turned around and looked straight at me. Here, I do believe this house here at the time had a high hedge. I don't remember it, but I found myself in the garden, but somebody afterwards told me that I'd actually dived through the hedge and just waiting there. I could hear gunshots, but I didn't know whether I was hit, what's it like to be hit, does it hurt? So I'm obviously feeling myself.
As Carl takes cover, police are still struggling to locate Ryan's whereabouts, largely due to hampered communications. To add to this, their usually swift firearms department are on a training exercise over 50 minutes away, making a quick response difficult. The Ryan family home in Southview is now blazing uncontrollably. Fire crews aren't allowed to get through until it is safe to do so. And as the fire destroys adjoining homes, just a few doors up, Sylvia Pascoe, a neighbour of Ryan's for 10 years, is trying to save the life of a 14-year-old girl.
Suddenly I heard breaking of glass and sort of stopped for a few seconds. My son came running in to get me because I'm in St John's ambulance, so his first port of call was, I'll get Mum. So I dropped everything, wasn't dressed, went round with him and went into my next door neighbour's kitchen to find the young girl that was standing there saying, I've been shot. I thought, delirious, doesn't happen. And she was worried about her trousers. They were her sister's and they were yellow, but they'd started to turn pink. And my first reaction was, I need to find out what your injuries are. I'll lay you down because you're going to fall down. I could see that there was a nasty gash in the top of her leg on the right, and there was blood pouring from this, and I thought to myself, well, I need to stop it. And I had a neighbour there who said, I'll get whatever you need.
I sent Robert.
And we grabbed towels, etc.
I don't know whether this will help.
And we put the leg on a flower pot to raise it. In the background we could hear what I would call firecrackers. And it still didn't sink in, because my main concern was, stopping this bleeding and making sure she wasn't going to go unconscious. I stayed by her side, on my knees, with the only way I can describe it is one hand supporting the bottom of the leg and then one over the top, with all these towels on top and just pressing down for direct pressure. We don't use tourniquets, and going through my mind was, what can I do if this doesn't work?
As Sylvia desperately tries to save Michael Ryan's youngest victim, the gunman is still at large. His route has steered clear of the main high street. Although police blocks now stop people entering the town, a lot of residents there are still unaware of the tragedy. Michael Ryan has made his way from Southview to Fairview Road, then back up Southview, across the playing field to Clark's Gardens. He has then walked over through the Memorial Gardens to Priory Avenue and Terrace Hill, randomly firing at people as he goes.
Well, it was some time before the firearms officers could actually get into the scene, because we didn't know it. We were getting reports of shots being fired, there were reports of people having been shot. Some people were injured, we knew that. The telephone system was just incapable of taking all the emergency calls that were coming in. So it was very difficult to piece it all together. But yes, we got an idea of the route Ryan was taking up through the playing fields towards the school.
Michael Ryan is now on Priory Road after taking aim at Carl Harries.
And then there was a change in the tone of the shots, and I recognised that as being a pistol, and then it all went completely deadly quiet. And as I came round the corner, I could see that Michael Ryan had gone up the road, so I was pretty confident where I knew he was. And as I came round the corner here, there was this red Renault 5, I do believe it was, and it was literally just rolling down the road here. I started walking up, and I remember somebody looking at the car and then started shouting, "She's been shot, she's been shot." So I chased after it, and I think it was around about here that I managed to catch up with the car. As I pulled her up and got the door open, somebody appeared, and I assumed at the time he came from one of these houses here. He said to me at the time that he was a off-duty ambulanceman, and he gave me a hand to carry her, and we carried her across to the grass. I do believe it was just here, and the ambulance came, and they basically took the girl away. And then I remember I just sat on the grass. Bless her, there was this little old lady, and she gave me one of these sort of like you know, these cheap car, plastic boxed type first aid kits, which really are no good for, you know, really anything other than a cut finger. And she said, oh, this will help, you know, and I said, oh, thanks very much.
As Ryan kills his 13th victim, 22-year-old Sandra Hill, this is now the biggest single massacre in the UK. 13 people are dead and a further 12 injured. As ambulance crews wait in the high street, they are desperate to reach the casualties, but like the police and fire crew, are restricted because of the danger. No one knows where the gunman is.
In the initial stages, one of our ambulances was shot at, and luckily the crew did get away, and we didn't want the same thing to happen again. It was immense pressure because you have people saying, my daughter or my son's up there and why aren't you doing anything? And people were shouting at you, but you couldn't actually put the crews at risk. You had the crews, in any of our jobs that we do, we have to put the crews' safety first.
Despite the potential risk, brave paramedics are gradually getting to the victims. Then making the 50-minute journey to the hospital where Sarah Britton is trying to cope with the rising number of casualties.
There seemed to be more and more people coming, sort of every time I sort of, you know, looked up again around the sort of main departments. And I think at that stage I was just looking, you know, where is the drugs cupboard? Where is, you know, where are the bandages kept? You know, where do I find equipment? I was literally just sort of being another nurse, if you like, a member of the team, an additional pair of hands. You expect sort of perhaps one or two, but when you start getting into double figures, I remember thinking, you know, when is it going to stop?
Back in Hungerford, as Michael Ryan makes his way up Priory Road, police are calling in more backup, and ambulance crews are anxiously waiting for clearance.
You know, it was important to get people out of the situation, as many as we could, but at the same time you've also got the problem of the person running around with the gun and you don't know where he is, so therefore you don't want to send the ambulances up into a danger area. And they would be detailed to go to Priory Road, another one would be detailed to go to Tarrants Hill, and it was sort of one ambulance to one section, as it were.
Over in Southview, as paramedics manage to reach Sylvia and Lisa Mildenhall, she has been shot 4 times and is losing a lot of blood. As they tend to her severe injuries, Sylvia is left to seek refuge at her neighbours.
Both myself and the neighbour, we were sort of just stood there and we just sort of looked at each other and we went to number 11. Nobody had told us who it was that had the gun at that time. I mean, because we had no radio on, no television on. We were sitting in the bedroom and we were sort of talking. I remember one of the kids dropped the Lucy and we all jumped. And then suddenly we looked out the bedroom window and there was these police in the school field with riot gear on. And they shouted and they said, right, when I tell you to run, I want you to come to the front door and I want you to run. I don't want you to stop, I want you to carry on down the road and I want you to run.
As Sylvia remains unaware that Michael Ryan has killed 13 people and injured 12, including Lisa, Carl Harries, who's already come face to face with the gunman, hasn't turned on his heel. Instead, he's now running towards Michael Ryan, trying to save others.
I was very dubious about going around the bend, because you go around the bend and the road is dead straight all the way up. And I thought, if I go around there, you know, he can see me, then help, you know. I made the decision that, you know, there's people up there that need help, I'm going to go up there. So on the left-hand side, there's a whole row of cars, and I sort of worked my way up, keeping low between the cars and the wall. And then I stopped, and I just didn't feel I felt something's not right. And I had a sort of quick look over the car, and he was actually come back, and it was actually just the other side of the car. And at that point, I was like, you know, I'm getting under this car. I don't know, it was quite eerie because you could see his foot, you could see his feet. It was a silly little things like, oh, my feet in. You know, have I got all my hands in? Is my feet in? Is he going to walk around and find my foot?
Michael Ryan is roaming the streets of his hometown, killing at random. In 55 minutes, he has killed 13 people and injured 12. He remains unchallenged. As police scramble to pinpoint his whereabouts, brave soldier Carl Harries remains undeterred by the danger and tries to save people in Ryan's wake.
I felt that something's not right. And I had a sort of quick look over the car, and he was actually come back and he was actually just the other side of the car. At that stage, I decided to get underneath the car. I don't know, it was quite eerie because you could see his feet, you know, and he would walk, stop, walk back again, and then he walked off. All I could hear was a woman screaming, absolutely screaming her head off. And at the time I was thinking, that's good, because if she's screaming, she's alive. And I remember being crouched down, I remember looking up and I could see the car. I remember sprinting across to here, and I think the car that had been crashed was round about where the bins are now. So I literally stayed down, and then made my way up towards the cars. When I got to the car, I realised that a shot had gone through the windscreen. And I later found out that they'd been actually driving down the road where he'd fired at them. And it was the driver that had been hit. The person screaming was his wife next to him. And he'd been shot in the neck. The lady goes to me, I'm a nurse. And I said to her, well, stop bloody screaming and give me a hand. Get out of the bloody car and give me a hand. And again, an ambulance appeared.
Please. Is he going to be all right, Ian?
Look, can I leave him with you now? Okay.
Meanwhile at the hospital, Sarah Britton's job is getting harder by the minute. What was 1 or 2 casualties is now many, many more. Calls from frantic loved ones are also swamping their systems, and Sarah is juggling her time between urgent nursing duties and dealing with inquiries. As more patients come through, Alison's mum is rushed to intensive care with serious throat injuries, and Alison's leg injuries are baffling doctors.
Try and relax your leg a bit.
I was taken out on a stretcher, and I was taken actually and just examined and had some x-rays. They just had a quick look and they actually stitched me up, put me in the side room and said that I could go home.
When we first went to see Ali, it was quite a positive story really, because they'd sort of finished sort of cleaning her up and doing all the checks, and sort of I think probably were in the process of stitching her up, and I remember she'd had some injections, I believe. And at that point they didn't realise that she still had sort of a bullet in her.
By now, the urgency to contain Michael Ryan is immense. A police speaker system is warning residents from the helicopter above. Firearms officers are now being briefed and sightings are still being reported. But Michael Ryan remains at large. He is on Priory Road after entering the house of Victor and Myrtle Gibbs and shooting them in their kitchen. He then walks next door, shooting Michael Jennings, and across the road, firing at Myra Gita through a front window. 16 people now lie dead and 14 injured. Carl Harries has been chasing Ryan for the past 40 minutes and is still risking his life to try and save the gunman's victims.
This lad came out from about 2 houses away and he goes, my girlfriend's been shot. He took me upstairs, and in the front room on the big bed, the girl was lying there, and she had the fashion of the day, the tight jeans and that lot, and you could see an entry wound and a leg. We carried her down the stairs and sat her down and said, in the back room, so let's go to the back of the house, so if anything happens, you can't be seen. Somebody said to me, oh, someone's been shot in that house. And I thought, oh, God, blimey. And here, where this new fence is, there was like fir tree type fence hedge, and I literally went up to the front door, banged on the door, couldn't hear anything.
Hello.
Lifted the letterbox, and one of those letterboxes got a flap on the inside as well. So I was lifting up, and as I looked in, I could see a guy sat on the stairs. So I started shouting at him, "You all right? You all right? Talk to me, because I've got to get in." And he then sort of brought his head up and looked. He says, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "What's happened to you?" Because I've been shot in the leg.
My neighbours.
I said, "Well, I need to get in and see you." And I said, "Watch out, I'll kick the door in." He goes, "No, I can make it." And I remember him dragging himself across the floor and leaning up and opening the door. Got in there, picked him up, moved him back to the stairs. And again, he'd been shot in the leg. He shouted back to me and he says, "Can you check my neighbours, something's happened there. I sort of tunnelled through the hedge and got to the house next door, and I knew it was going to be bad straight away because it had a whole glass front door and all the glass was shot out.
As Carl rushes to another house, Alison's condition alarmingly deteriorates.
I then had a policeman come in, he wanted to take some statements. He was talking to me quite normally, and he looked down and he just went really pale, and I thought, what's he looking at? He looked down and all the stitches had come apart and my leg was just pouring blood.
And it was almost when they were getting ready to move her to a ward away from the intensive care unit, because obviously other people were coming in that were in a worse state really, that she collapsed, and then they realised that there was something that was still sort of not very right with her.
It is now 1:45 p.m. Michael Ryan has spent 60 minutes shooting innocent people in a random attack. He has killed 16, including his own mother, and injured 14. The family house is ablaze and has now spread to the adjoining 3 houses. Now he walks up Priory Road to his old school, shooting George Noon in his porch, as police start to close the net, and Carl Harris has just reached the home of Victor and Myrtle Gibbs.
This is the one stage I remember being extremely nervous about, going in. What do I do? I was trying to be, tactical about it, military-wise, and sort of going in carefully, keeping low, and all the sort of things they trained to do. And because I was doing that, I didn't realise there was a big, massive pile of glass, and I started walking on the glass, and it made an awful noise, or it felt like an awful noise. And then I heard a noise response, and I thought, oh God. I just stood there, and then that noise I could suddenly hear was a woman's voice, and she was like, "Help me, please help me, my husband, please help me." Dead quiet. I thought, if he's in the house, he must have heard that. He will respond. I'll hear movement from somewhere, and the stairs is to my right. I was just literally just staring at the stairs, in case he came down, and nothing happened. So I started making my way into the kitchen, and to my right on the back. There was like a kitchen back door, and there was this old lady that was sort of like curled around the door with her back to the door, and her husband laid on top of her. And it was sad, because straight away you could see her husband was trying to protect her. And she goes, my husband, is he dead? And I said, no, of course he's not dead, don't be silly. He's all right, let's worry about you. And I remember lifting him up and pulling him off of her. And she had been shot. I remember having this plastic first aid kit, and I just looked at it, opened it, and went, that is just so no good. I thought, I need more kit. Basically, I need more kit. I was going to run back across the road to where the girl had been shot before and ask them if they had a first aid kit. And as I came out, I thought, no, sod it, I'm going for it, and just going to run straight across the road. As I came out of the house, as I looked up this road, obviously, and I looked left before I ran across, and right at the bottom of the road there was an ambulance. So I stood there like a madman waving. It suddenly dawns on me then, like, you're facing down the road waving like a madman and he's behind you somewhere. So it was sort of like back into the side and feebly, but they'd already spotted us and they flashed the lights.
Carl helps the paramedics with 4 of Michael Ryan's victims. Over 3 hours later, he heads up to the school. It is now 5:26 p.m.
And eventually got round the corner to the school, and there was a policeman stood there, a single policeman. And he's like, who are you? I says, well, I've been treating people back there. I've come round, so don't worry, he says, we've got them cornered in the school, it's all under control.
The firearms team surrounded the school, and in fact, one of the firearms officers actually then spoke to Ryan, trying to get him to give himself up. The firearms team at that stage wouldn't have known exactly how many people he had shot, but they'd certainly be aware that he had killed more than one person, and that there was every likelihood that he would try and shoot somebody else.
I was looking and said, you're telling me it's all under control, 100% under control? He goes, yeah, we're all sorted. You sure? And he goes, yeah. I said, fine, that'll do me. Turn around and I walked back.
And then somebody came up the road and said to me,
sorry. Cars in the high street is all covered in blood. I thought perhaps he's just wounded, or perhaps I can get there and save him.
As dusk settles on Hungerford, the gunfire has ceased. Carl Harries is now safely with his father. Sylvia Pascoe is in the shelter of an old people's home after being ordered to run down Southview by police.
Hello, A&E.
Sarah Britton is being inundated at the hospital. Doctors are prepping for surgery after discovering a bullet lodged in Alison's back. And Michael Ryan is surrounded by police at his old secondary school. You are surrounded by armed police. Do as you're told, and no harm will come to you.
What about my mother? She's dead. I know she's dead.
I will try to find out about your mother, Mr. Ryan.
I've picked up my gun again. If only the police car hadn't turned up, if only my car had started. I'm not coming out until I know about my mother.
Mr. Ryan, I'm still trying to find out. If you come down, we'll be able to find out together. At 6:52 p.m, after attempted negotiations for over an hour, police hear a single muffled shot from inside the school. At 8:10 p.m, just over an hour later, they enter to find Michael Ryan dead in classroom 6. The Hungerford massacre on the 19th of August 1987 will never be forgotten, but for the brave victims, residents and emergency services, they have tried hard to rebuild their lives. Sarah Britton went on to work as a service manager and is still in the health profession.
And there have been other incidents called. Some of them have probably not come to anything, others have. I'm very happy to report that of the incidents I've been involved in, none of them have been related to guns.
Sylvia Pascoe still lives in Southview and works with the St John's ambulance.
He said she lost 3 pints of blood, and if you hadn't done what you did, she'd have died.
Alison Chapman's mum recovered, and despite the bullet still lodged in Alison's back, she was thrilled to give birth.
Just tend to get on with it. I mean, I'm still here. You know, I've got a wonderful husband and a beautiful son, so I'm making the best of what I got.
Carl Harries is now a captain in the British Army. He received a commendation for his bravery.
He handed me a letter and he said, "This is from Buckingham Palace." And you know, I sat there and opened it up and he goes, "What's it say?" He goes, "What's it say?" And I said, "Oh, I've been told that I'm going on the honours list and I'm getting a Queen's Commendation for bravery."
But I was determined that one person was not going to stop me living in a house that I loved, in a neighbourhood that I loved.
Michael Ryan took just 1 hour to leave a trail of devastation that tragic day. Before this massacre, Hungerford hadn't witnessed a murder for 111 years. With 84 rounds from his AK-47, 34 from a Beretta pistol, and 1 round from his M1 carbine, he shot 31 people, killing 16, before turning a gun on himself.
It's the people who were there, it's their families, the ambulance girls, the policemen watching their colleagues being shot. It's those are the people that really I feel so sorry for.
They classify Michael Ryan as a loner who lived with his mum, but I've got friends and, you know, that are loners and live with their parents. You know, that doesn't make somebody get an armoury of weapons and go out and kill a lot of people. You know, they try and psychoanalyse him, but I always say the only person that could say why he did it isn't here, and that is Michael Ryan.
As a result of the massacre, gun laws in the UK were changed to stop anyone possessing a semi-automatic weapon. Has it made a difference?
I think, yes, the measures that were brought in were as a direct response to public demand and police demand at the time. Why did a person need to possess an AK-47 semi-automatic rifle? I can't give a reason for that.
If people want to get their hands on guns, they will, regardless of any gun law in place. I mean, there's, you know, you could probably get one if you went somewhere and spoke to the right people within half an hour, I should think. And it sounds real cliche, it's not the guns that kill people, it's the people behind them.
This could happen in a small town in this country tomorrow. And to be honest with you, I think the people will be better equipped for it, but I don't think the response would be much better at the time because it wouldn't be expected.